Let me paint you a picture. It's 2003. Cadillac, the brand your grandfather associated with shuffleboard tournaments and early bird specials, walks into a boardroom and says, "You know what? Let's take the same LS6 engine architecture from the Corvette Z06 and shove it into a four-door sedan." The result? 400 horsepower of German hunting insanity wrapped in a suit and tie. This is the story of how Cadillac stopped making cars for retirement homes and started making cars that could humiliate BMWs for $30,000 less. The early 2000s were a strange time for Cadillac. The brand that once defined American luxury had become synonymous with something far less glamorous, namely your dentist's waiting room. Sales were declining. The average Cadillac buyer was approximately 147 years old, and BMW was eating their lunch, dinner, and whatever meal comes after that. But somewhere deep inside General Motors, someone had a dangerous idea. What if, and stay with me here, what if Cadillac made a car that young people actually wanted? What if they took their revolutionary new CTS sedan and turned it into something that could hunt down an M5 on the Autobahn? What if they committed corporate insanity? The answer arrived in 2004, wearing a subtle mesh grille and hiding 400 horses under its hood. The Cadillac CTS-V. And yes, that's the same LS6 engine architecture from the Corvette Z06. The same aluminum block, the same heads, the same camshaft philosophy. Cadillac essentially looked at America's sports car and said, "We'll take one of those, with 4 doors and a back seat, please. 400 horsepower. 400. From a Cadillac, in a sedan." Your grandfather's brain just short-circuited. Let that satisfying cognitive dissonance wash over you. Now, before we dive into the beautiful madness that is the first-generation CTS-V, let's establish what Cadillac was actually fighting against. The early 2000s German performance sedan market was dominated by names that made enthusiasts weak in the knees. The BMW M5 with its naturally aspirated V8. The Mercedes E55 AMG with its supercharged fury. These were cars that cost $70, $80, sometimes $90,000, and they were worth every penny, if you had every penny. Cadillac's strategy was beautifully American. Why pay more when you can pay less and still win? The CTS-V launched at $49,995. That's roughly $30,000 less than a comparably equipped E55 AMG. $30,000. That's not a discount, that's financial warfare. But here's where it gets interesting. GM didn't just throw a Corvette engine into a sedan and call it a day. They actually engineered this thing properly. The suspension was developed after extensive Nürburgring testing. Yes, that Nürburgring, where GM engineers tuned the chassis to handle 400 pound-feet of torque, trying to rip the rear axle apart. The result was a suspension that was 27% stiffer than the base CTS. Larger anti-roll bars front and rear. Monotube shocks. Strengthened subframes specifically designed to handle the violence of the LS6. This wasn't a half-hearted badge engineering exercise. This was Cadillac deciding that if they were going to fight Germans, they'd learn to fight on German soil. And then there were the brakes. Brembo 4-piston calipers, 14-inch rotors up front. On a Cadillac, the brand that previously considered performance braking to be any stop that didn't involve a shopping cart collision. I'll wait while the cognitive dissonance continues. Now, let's talk about what really mattered. The transmission. Or rather, the singular transmission. Because for 2004 and 2005, the CTS-V was offered with exactly one gearbox option. The Tremec T56 6-speed manual. The same unit from the Corvette Z06. No automatic available. None. Zero. Cadillac, the brand of plush leather and isolation from the outside world, was telling customers, "You want this car? Learn to drive stick." This was corporate suicide, or corporate genius. The line between those two things is remarkably thin. Cadillac was essentially filtering their customer base, saying, "If you can't handle 3 pedals, you don't deserve 400 horsepower." It was the most un-Cadillac thing Cadillac had ever done. And it was absolutely perfect. The performance numbers told a compelling story. GM claimed 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds, which would have made the CTS-V one of the fastest sedans you could buy in America. But here's where honesty becomes important. Period testing from car and driver showed times closer to 5.2 seconds. The culprit? a phenomenon called wheel hop that made launching the car properly nearly impossible without professional technique. GM's engineers could apparently manage 4.6 seconds using, and I quote, "a judicious combination of clutch slip and wheel spin." Translation: unless you attended the GM school of CTS-V launch technique, you weren't replicating those numbers. This wasn't a flaw they hid. It was documented. And honestly, it makes the car more interesting, not less. The quarter mile told a more consistent story. 13.3 to 13.7 seconds at around 108 miles per hour. That's genuine sports car territory from a four-door sedan with a usable back seat. The M5 was barely faster. The E55 AMG was comparable, and they cost significantly more. But raw numbers only tell part of the story. What made the CTS-V special was something harder to quantify. It felt like a weapon. The LS6's torque curve was gloriously immediate. 395 pound-feet available early in the rev range, ready to liquefy your rear tires at the slightest provocation. Still with me? Good, because it gets even more unhinged. Now, if you watched our episodes on the Corvette Z06, you already know this engine. The LS6 was GM's masterpiece of pushrod engineering, an aluminum small block that revved to 6,000 RPM, while making more torque than engines twice its complexity. In the Z06, it made 405 horsepower. In the CTS-V, it made 400 flat. 5 horses lost to exhaust manifold packaging. A sacrifice GM was willing to make for the sake of fitting this monster into a sedan engine bay. But here's what made the CTS-V truly special compared to its European rivals: simplicity. The BMW M5 of that era used a complex high-revving V8 with individual throttle bodies. The Mercedes E55 AMG relied on supercharging. The CTS-V, pure displacement. Simple pushrods. American muscle philosophy applied to German fighting duty, and this philosophy extended to maintenance costs. When something breaks on an M5, and something will break on an M5, you're looking at specialty German engineering prices. When something breaks on a CTS-V, you're looking at small block Chevrolet parts. The same basic architecture that's been powering everything from Corvettes to pickup trucks for decades. Parts availability measured in hours, not weeks. The exterior design told its own story. Cadillac's art and science design language gave the CTS-V sharp creases and angular surfaces that looked like nothing else on the road. A stainless steel mesh grille that whispered Bentley. Subtle V badges on the fenders. Quad exhaust tips out back. And unless you were a car person, you might not even notice the difference from a regular CTS. This was the definition of a sleeper. 400 horsepower hiding behind corporate camouflage. The kind of car that could pull up next to an M3 at a stoplight and leave its driver genuinely confused about what just happened. Inside, Cadillac made some interesting choices. Suede leather inserts on the seats, a material choice that said performance rather than luxury. Aircraft-style gauges with a speedometer that swept to 180 miles per hour. A thick steering wheel that actually felt like it belonged in a driver's car. Was it perfect? No. The center stack plastic was, to quote one reviewer, clearly sourced to the lowest bidder. The foot-mounted parking brake created a four-pedal situation that confused everyone. Some interior pieces reminded you that this was still a General Motors product from the early 2000s. But when you have 400 horsepower and a 6-speed manual, you learn to forgive plastic. The Germans were starting to sweat, metaphorically. Germans don't actually sweat. They perspire efficiently. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Or rather, the differential in the trunk. Early CTS-V models had a documented weakness. The rear differential could fail under hard launches. Wheel hop plus maximum torque plus repeated drag strip abuse equaled unhappy axle components. And GM's response to warranty claims was, let's say, less than enthusiastic. This wasn't a secret. Owners knew. Forums documented it extensively. GM eventually offered upgraded differentials, at the owner's expense for early cars. It's the kind of flaw that would have destroyed a lesser car's reputation. But CTS-V owners accepted it as the price of admission. You don't get 400 horsepower for 50 grand without some compromises. And here's what the critics missed. The CTS-V proved something important. Cadillac could compete, not on heritage, not on badge prestige, on pure, objective performance. When Motor Trend put the CTS-V against the BMW M3 and Audi S4, the Cadillac held its own. When Car and Driver took it to Putnam Park Raceway, it posted the fastest lap time of the group. The racing results confirmed it. In SCCA World Challenge competition, where manufacturers had to race production-based vehicles, the CTS-V won manufacturer championships in 2005 and 2007, against BMWs, against Porsches, a Cadillac, winning races. In the 21st century, the automotive equivalent of your grandfather suddenly winning a UFC fight. For 2006, the LS6 was replaced by the LS2, the 6-liter V8 from the C5 Corvette. Same 400 horsepower, but with a stronger differential and revised internals. The 2004-2005 LS6 cars remained something special though, a direct link to the legendary Z06, sharing its engine architecture. The four-door Z06 nickname wasn't marketing speak. It was accurate. Today, clean first-generation CTS-Vs are becoming increasingly desirable. The manual-only transmission. The Z06 engine lineage. The aggressive pricing that meant these cars were actually driven, not garage-kept. Survivors with documented history are commanding attention from collectors who recognize what Cadillac achieved. The CTS-V proved that American manufacturers could build world-class performance sedans. Not by copying European philosophy, but by applying American muscle car thinking to the executive sedan segment. More power, more torque, more value, less complexity. It was a formula that worked then, and it's a formula that still resonates now. GM put a Corvette engine in a Cadillac sedan, priced at $30,000 under the competition, and dared the Germans to respond. This wasn't evolution. This was a declaration of war. And for $49,995, the first shot was remarkably affordable. The 2004-2005 CTS-V asked a simple question. What happens when you stop caring about what a Cadillac is supposed to be, and start caring about what a Cadillac could be? The answer was 400 horsepower, a manual transmission, and the complete annihilation of brand expectations. And that SCCA championship in 2005? That was just the beginning. 20 years later, Cadillac is entering Formula One with a factory team. Something unthinkable before the CTS-V helped restart Cadillac's performance credibility. Sometimes the best way to save a legacy is to set it on fire. Cadillac brought the gasoline, the LS6 brought the spark, and 2 decades later, they're still burning. If you enjoyed watching Cadillac's redemption arc, hit subscribe, because we document the cars that defined eras and destroyed preconceptions. This is Car Chronicles.